Hello and welcome to the GMS Magazine Podcast. I am Paco Garcia, your host, and this is a podcast all about board games, role-playing games, and the people who make them, sometimes the people who play them, and I have another host.
This is Chris from Dias XMachina. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, thank you very much indeed. I managed to rest yesterday after my trip to London, where I went to Dragonmeet.
Yes. How was it? I was trying to figure like Dragonmeet, and then I was like, oh, all these people are in Dragonmeet. And then I realized I started looking at it a bit more, going, oh yeah, let's see, Russ, Faith. This is in London, isn't it?
It is in London, and I am really annoyed that I didn't get to meet Faith. Very annoyed, very annoyed. Because one of the issues with Dragonmeet is that they close at 6 o'clock. And understandably, they are very strict. So at 6 o'clock, you cannot go back in. And I was having a drink with my friend Lisbeth and Francesco and another guy, Roberto, from Italy. And I didn't realize the time. By the time I got to the door, it was 1 minute past 6.
Oh.
They didn't let me in, which is very fair enough. And I couldn't buy about 15 indie zines that I wanted to buy. I still managed to buy a few games beforehand. All of them, well, except one, solitaire games. I bought 1,000 Years Vampire, which wasn't any nominee in 2022, and it looks so beautiful. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And I bought Corico, which is a take on a Ghibli film, something delivery service.
Kiki's Delivery Service.
That's the one. And it's a take on that with witches and a teenager in a city that they don't know, and they need to find out who they are because they're teenagers whilst they discover what the city is getting for them. It looks absolutely beautiful, and I have no idea how much I paid for it. No clue. I just looked at it. I talked to the designer and I said, okay, here's my watch, which is my credit card. Give me one. He approached the machine. He gave me the box. I still don't know how much I paid for it. I don't care because it looks so absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, I was annoyed that I missed a few of the people. I couldn't meet Faith. I didn't see my friend Steven from Britannia Games. I barely had the chance to talk with Simon Rogers, who I love very much. But I did get to see Shanna Germain. And I tell you, she is either a goddess or she's made a pact with a very powerful demon. Because I met Shanna in 2013, I think it was, when they came, Shanna and Monte came to UK Games Expo. And I tell you that 10 years on, she's not aged a year. She looks exactly the same. So I don't know if she's got, a painting of herself rotting in her cellar or something like that, because she looks...
Maybe she has Muppet DNA.
I don't know. She looks identical, and just as wonderful. And I saw Chris Pramas, or Pramas. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how he pronounces his surname. Sorry, Chris. I love you, mate. And that was absolutely lovely to see. And Gareth Ryder Hanrahan, he was there as well. And Chris Birch, who was also there. So I saw a fair number of people, which I was really looking for. To be honest, it's the reason why I go to Dragonmeet, just to buy games and spend too much money and see my friends. So that's that. I missed the Jeff Richard from Chaosin wasn't around. I didn't get the chance to give Mike Mason a big hug because he's adorable and I really like him. So I missed a few people, which I'm disappointed, but I saw others and I had a great time. And now it means that next year, instead of 15 zines, I have to buy 20 or 30. I don't know, as many as I possibly can carry with me. But yeah, it was lovely and exhausting, very exhausting. But I'm rested now. So anyway, we have things to talk about. Which one would you like to talk about first? Shall we get the dodgy business out of the way first?
Okay, so Alumni Ventures are investing in Evil Genius Games to modernize tabletop gaming. AV, one of the world's most active venture capital firms, are now a proud investor in Evil Genius Games. The company is developing modern a tabletop role-playing game supported by unique games as a service platform. AV is part of the company's impressive investor syndicate, blah, 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 blah. So basically what this means is that if venture capital is investing, we don't know how much, an undetermined amount of money in David T. Scott, David Genius Games. For those people who don't know, this is the company that went through a huge controversy about a years back where they decided to embrace Web3 technology. And despite posting an anti-AI policy, behind the scenes, there was some indication that they were employing it in some capacity. This resulted in a exodus of extremely respectable, talented people from that company, many of whom are now friends of the podcast. We've had them on, and we've talked with many of them. They've all more or less have landed on their feet. But despite this exodus, the company continues to trudge on, and so much so that their success, obviously our success, because you had a conversation with Dave regarding our coverage. I try to be a little bit neutral and just try to sell the facts because I can be accused of having an agenda, considering I technically have a competing product to him. I have to have that disclosure so people are aware. I created Ultramodern 5. Everyday Heroes, despite having a slightly different facet, can be considered competition. We're designed to be a completely 100% 5th edition compatible non-fantasy rule system. They are a standalone 5e variant non-fantasy rule system that's not technically designed to be compatible with 5e fantasy. Mine is, but there's no doubt that they blew up on the scene with a lot of money. But it seems that their fan goodwill is starting to suffer because the one thing fans love are games as a service. It is one of the most vilified ideas it's a cancer within the video game community. Whenever someone said this is games as a service, you do that to get people to invest or buy stocks of your company. There is nothing fans hate more than those investor pop culture terms. Games as a service is one of them. Microtransactions is another one. So I don't know what their plan is to convert Everyday Heroes as a games as a service platform. This will be very interesting to see what their plan is, but I can certainly see them doing, basically trying to replicate what Wizards of the Coast is doing and trying to say, you know what, we are not going to try to sell this game to all the old gamers, all the people who love rolling dice. We want to go after the people who are buying video games and get them into D&D. And so they're trying to replicate the same thing Wizards of the Coast is doing with their new ventures.
Well, for my part, to be perfectly honest, I am. Sorry,
I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong.
To be honest, I'm quite disappointed to see this happening, because you're absolutely right. I did talk to Dave about it. You know, he approached. I wanted to have a honest conversation with me about, you know, the podcast that we did and the coverage that we did of the company. And if you're interested in this, is the podcast that we released in February 2024. It was this year. And we had a private conversation, which is why, you know, I haven't made it public. I won't, because it wouldn't be ethical or unfair. But one of the things that we discussed was about them investing in crypto and how that was horrible. And Dave admitted to my face that, yeah, he thinks that it's a scam, you know, that crypto is a scam, but other people are investing in crypto, so he needs the money. So why wouldn't he allow crypto companies to invest in Evil Genius? Which obviously, as you can imagine, I did have a couple of things to tell him about that. The conversation was quite amicable. He is a very charming, very polite and charismatic man. So it was, we didn't come to blows. Quite the opposite. We left in very good terms because we did have a very good time, and he was able to handle the punches that I threw at him quite easily. So he's obviously used to it. But I find it
Mm.
disappointing because one of the things that that he said to me is that he was going to look into which one of the investors, and there were seven, were into crypto, and he would try to look for different um, means of funding the company that weren't related to crypto. And within a month, boom, this happens. And it's a bit, um, dude, seriously, seriously. I mean, okay, obviously you didn't have to tell me during our conversation what his plans were for the future, but for goodness sake, don't lie to my face. When within a month there's going to be a headline that's going to tell me, Paco, I was lying to your fucking face. Like, what reason am I going to have now to believe absolutely anything that comes out of his mouth or that came out of his mouth when we had this interview? So, to be perfectly honest, I don't have a friendship with him. Right now. I am not interested in having any kind of friendship or Facebook contact with him or anything, because my trust in the person has been completely and utterly obliterated. And recovering that, if it meant anything to him, which I doubt, would be incredibly difficult to do. So that is very, very disappointing. So I think I'm not going to call for a boycott or anything that I know other people would do. And to be honest, if I wanted to do that, I would have better reasons to do it than that. But I think it's important that people realize and understand that when you're buying an evil genius game, you are basically helping build a company that eventually, if it came to pass, its dividends are going to make a crypto bro even richer. So that
Well,
is
this
something people
this
need to
is
keep in mind.
yeah. I'm still amazed. Well, if eventually this whole thing comes down to the fact that I guess it's a very interesting thing. We have seen attempts
Mhm.
within the video game market to break into board games because it's got a lot of money. And we've seen a lot of great, really wonderful board game adaptations of video games where we're transitioning from digital to the physical media to be attracted to this community of people that are trying to detach from technology. We haven't seen as many board game to video game transitions. There have been quite a few. We talked about the Pathfinder digital variant. Tainted Grail has one. Nemesis has one. These are extremely few and far between. Oddly enough, we talked about, I just mentioned two of them, and they're all made by the same company. The vast majority of board games will never have a digital version. Most of the time, they're apps. I think I said, I can safely say that just because no matter how many games we bring up, that there's I don't know what came first, Plague, the video game, to play the board game, but we know that Pandemic has a video game, and Nyram is a game I play all the time. Ascension is a very good digital game.
Okay,
But the point is,
let me okay. Let me stop you a second. Can we define what you mean with video game? Because as far as I'm concerned, an app is a video game.
It is.
Okay,
But I'm still saying the fact that
there are an awful lot of board games now.
Oh, there are
loads.
Tons.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that the ratio is really
true.
low.
Okay, I conceded. Yes, I give you that.
Yeah. It's one of those situations where it's the same thing on the opposite. Obviously, it works the opposite way around. The vast majority of video games will never become board games, but there is this kind of transition. But of course, when you make that transition, there is going to be, no matter how successful for example, there's a League of Legends board game, and Minions and Mecha or something like that, and there are board game versions of almost all the big video games. The amount of money that board game has made is less than 1% of what the video game makes.
It's infinite.
And unfortunately, in some ways, it's the other way. I have no information on the other way around, but I don't know anyone who's played. I know people who have played Nemesis, the board game. I don't know anyone who's played the Nemesis video game. I don't know anyone who's played the Tainted Grail video game. I don't know if they're successful. I have a funny feeling that the apps are probably doing quite well. I think the Ascension app is a really good game. Nyram is a very good game. I don't know how successful they are, But from my opinion, I think when you transition from one to another, you're going to lose a bit of that market and try to gain a new market. And so for D&D is probably the only brand, and maybe Pathfinder, maybe a few others, that could transition into a video game format and try to pull their audience with them. I don't see Everyday Heroes having that type of target penetration. I mean, if you did Wormwood or sorry, Humblewood or some campaign that is so successful that D&D is selling it on their storefront, I can see that. If someone were to make a Humblewood video game, I can totally see that. But once again, we're not even talking about a video game. We're not even entirely sure what their games of a service is. Because if you were to make an Everyday Heroes video game, I can even see that, but they're not even going into that. They're going into they're just talking about ways of monetizing, not even creating entertainment. They're just talking about monetizing what they have, which goes to show you that it is all entirely about how much money you can make. To dive into this, if somebody were to approach you and offer you a job, but and maybe pay you in crypto, I say with a wink, or someone were to pay or were to invest in my company and say, we want to pay you, but we want to advance your company to NFTs or something like that. I go, I'm not interested. If they say, well, we'll give you $5 million, I'm like, okay, let's talk. It's hard for me to not say no to that type of money.
Yeah, and well, the thing is, I think everybody has a price, and I don't know how much money they've paid Dave, and I don't care. It's none of my business. I don't. The thing is, I don't think that, despite the fact that he's got a few popular IPs in the catalog, with Rambo and Soldier and that sort of thing. I just don't think that company is ever going to make enough money to be able to pay back the investment that people are putting into it. I would be very, 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 very surprised if that were ever to be the case. With regards to going digital, I mean, Ascension, and it's been going for a while, it's got more than 500,000 downloads. On Android. That's from the Play Store. So I don't know how much money that means. Probably means that they can keep up a wealthy, healthy economy within the company. But that is a lot of downloads. Now, whether a role-playing game can get that number of downloads, and considering how much blowback crypto gets, I would be very surprised. So I just don't think that it is a good strategy. So we'll see where it goes and where it takes the company. But I'm not foreseeing that this is going to end in a multi-million Larian size deal for anyone, like, ever.
I agree. So yeah, there's not much else to say on that one. Once we have an idea, like, I would like to see an announcement from Evil Genius Games that is not about investors, crypto, Web3. I have not seen an update. Maybe I'm not paying attention to the right sources. I've not seen an update on their product line. There's talk about them doing a urban arcana, or basically a urban fantasy and a sci-fi version of Everyday Heroes next year. We'll see what happens. Like, there's mention about that. I guess we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, again, Dave did mention a couple of names and a couple of games, but I'd rather not discuss them because I don't know where they're going to go. I don't know what's happening with them. I know one person who is currently working with him, and he's somebody that I think very, very highly of. And I don't want to tarnish his name in any way, shape, or form, so I will not mention anything else. But I will just say, listener, viewer, if you're thinking about, getting an Evil Genius game, I'm not going to say don't do it, but I'm just going to say that if you do it, know that there is some crypto investment going into that company, and you should be able to make an informed decision as to whether you want to give them your money or not.
And remember, ideas can generate, like, he could potentially get into tens of millions of dollars before realizing that it's like I was just watching a video about how expensive some of these startups have gotten, how much money that they've generated before they went completely bankrupt. And sometimes these numbers are as high as 40 or 50 billion dollars. So, there's no ending of where somebody who looking for venture who knows how to sell their product can raise money. I mean, at that point, yeah. But that's it.
Okay, so let's see. This warns me another email. We'll see. Let's go to part 2.